Hello, welcome to the Black Box App Podcast. I'm your host, Kenneth Johnson, president of the diversity recruitment firm East Coast Executives and founder of the Black Box App. Excited to be here today with a gentleman that, I guess I met him, that could have been about 8 years ago in Philadelphia, just casually on the street after a Urban League of Philadelphia event. And I kind of kept my eyes on his work, saw some of the stuff he was doing. He dropped a book. I know he's doing a lot of consulting. I'm happy today to have Mr. Rahshib Thomas on the Black Box App Podcast. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so very much. Glad to be here and glad to share with the listeners. And it's also great that connections continue to build even after, being observed on 8 years ago on the street and at an event. And, just to speak to that, I actually, I don't think I was invited to that event, but I wanted to show up. So I took the bus to Philadelphia because that's how my budget was. And look what happened. Things just continue to create because I jumped in the middle.
There you go. Well, I know the people in Philly were glad to have you. I was doing consulting at that time with the Philadelphia Urban League, and that's my family out there. Philly is home to me. So we welcomed you and the fellow New Yorkers to Philly, and then I came here and started doing things with the New York Urban League, and guess who's involved again? Rahshib Thomas. So it just was supposed to happen.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, well, look, if you don't mind, give my audience the quick bio, man. Who's Rahshib Thomas?
Absolutely. So what I love to say is that I help people discover information they can use. And I do that as a consultant in the areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion, human resources, and also as a professional coach. A lot of people know me through my coaching arm of my business called Aligned Coaching. I've spent my years in human resources and honing my, as I like to say, people-to-people skills in working in luxury rental residential, also working in hospitality companies. And just like you said, the National Urban League, also learning advocacy and public policy and also community organizing through my work with the National Urban League, where I served as a young professional leader and then also helping my local affiliate, the New York Urban League. Based here in Harlem, USA, but my heritage, as I always like to say, is my Louisianans migrated west. So I tell people my home is Tacoma, Washington, and then also New Orleans, Louisiana. And so when I say that is because some of those Rahshibisms, sometimes they're going to be very Pacific Northwestern come out, other times they're going to be country and from that boot. And so with a little New York spin on it. And so you get Rahshibisms from me. So that's who I am.
Hey, I never knew about the Tacoma piece. So that's another conversation for another day. But man, that's amazing. So if I remember correctly, you're an author as well.
Yes, absolutely. Published a book called About That Life, Leadership Lessons for the Urban Professional, where I took my years as a Black man in human resources and also having those dual worlds that some of us have where we work in a corporate space, but then there's a reality that we go home to where we actually live in America. And so I put my experience of succeeding in work and from my perspective in the book About That Life, Leadership Lessons for the Urban Professional. People can Google it. It's on my website and it's also in iBooks or Barnes & Noble, but I put that in there, published it about 5 years ago, and I'm excited that I get to have those conversations with people.
That's amazing. Listen, the whole book writing process, kind of tell me mentally where you were at. What made you decide, all right, I need to do this work? Because I hear it's a commitment.
It is a commitment, but here's the thing. I had so many thoughts in my head, and I realized as a young professional Urban League leader and as just growing as a speaker and growing as a coach, that I was repeating some of the same things because a lot of us are going through a lot of the same things, right? Yeah. And so I was repeating those things and I said, oh, maybe I should take all of those ideas out of my head and put them on paper. Well, that was just the first thought. What I've learned since then and what I tell your listeners and tell anyone who's listening is that that's the toughest part, getting the ideas and thoughts out of your head onto paper. That's one. So I offer anyone listening to write anytime you can. If you take notes on your phone, if you take voice notes and have someone else or transcribe it, anytime you have an idea, be obedient to that idea. I find myself in the shower, a thought comes, something comes, and I quickly go to my phone and record it, or I type it down. write it down so I can remember it. Now that's step one with just don't care how it looks, don't worry about how it looks. But then when you start to get it to an editor, so finding an editor is step two, and then that'll have people format it in a way that we know what books look like. And then last thing I'll say around that is letting other people read it, because the way I may speak in my vernacular may not translate to someone else. And so if you're looking to have the broadest impact, for me being a Louisianan, I actually had an editor who was Louisianan, and I realized that he edited in the voice of a Louisianan, right? That Cajun country talk, you heard me? And so I needed to let someone from Detroit.
Juvenile was your editor?
You heard me, and I needed to let someone from Detroit and even California. So when they started giving me feedback on, well, what does this mean? And I said, well, this is how we say it in Louisiana. And then the person would ask me, well, why don't you just say it this way? And I said, that makes sense. So also letting other people read it so they can give you feedback because you want the broadest impact.
Now, I have a question around that, but first I want you to let our listeners know where they can find the book and the book title again, please.
Absolutely. So they can go to aboutthatlifebook.com, or you can Google About That Life Book. You can also go to my website, RahshibThomas.com, and they can find it. And again, the title of the book is About That Life, Leadership Lessons for the Urban Professional.
I love it. That's definitely a necessary thing. Man, just as a Black man, I'm proud of you, and I appreciate you providing everlasting and evergreen content for those that come behind us, and even those that are ahead of us that are looking for information or just general leadership skills or stuff that they can use to make their own career pivot. So kudos to you, my friend. All right, so I'm listening to some of the things you were speaking about: Detroit, California, Louisiana, these people that have been supportive of you and the work that you're doing. Is this kind of like your own personal mastermind group?
You could say, or people say your board of directors. So that people that they have a listening for me, so they're interested in what I'm saying, and then also they are honest with me in a way that they give me feedback, because if it doesn't make sense to them, and then I have a listening for them where I know that they're telling me something for as we'd say in New Orleans, for true. It's truthful, right? And so with that said, I do periodically dip in and out of spaces that you would consider a mastermind, to where there are other thought leaders in the groups that are doing some of the same things. And so I learn from them. Sure. But then I also have my own network of people that I've built, and you could say mentors, you could say team, but it's people that have poured into me, and I get to also pour into them. And then they're riders, right? I know that they're there, and they answer my texts when I call, and so I still lean on those people.
Hey, let's talk about this board of directors concept. Now, are you a reader? Well, I'm sure you're a reader because you're a writer.
Yes.
That being said, you've read Think and Grow Rich, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah. Definitely one of the gems from that, creating your personal board of directors, even if they're not people that you know personally. Just kind of getting in that mindset and gathering information from whatever tools and resources are out there. Is that a big part of how you do your own professional development?
You absolutely, yes. And social media makes that easier in a way that, as far as we can follow people, especially people who are like LinkedIn top voices. Yes. We'll get into the Black Box app and just all of the information out there, but there's so many organizations that do work that you can pick up nuggets. I was listening to a D&I podcast yesterday about anti-Blackness in the D&I space, and I was on the train listening to that, and I was taking notes as I went. But the other piece is, sometimes people when you say board of directors or mentors, some people get intimidated by that because they think it has to be formal. And it's actually, if you have people in your life that answer your questions and they answer a text, or they respond to an email when you need support or clarification, that person is mentoring you. That person is on your board of directors, and you want to continually access and utilize those resources. Now, here's the other piece. Also be looking to how you can be a contribution in their life, because you want to give as much as you receive.
I think that's a really big, an important part of that. A lot of people go out looking for mentors, not thinking though about how they add value to the mentor as well. Typically the people that get that request, they have other people that have made that request. Alfred Edmonds from Black Enterprise speaks about this often. He really kind of interviews the people that have asked him to be a mentor. His mentees, he asks them, what can you do for me? I just think that's an interesting approach, and it involves some ownership from all parties involved. And I think once you set that platform, you can start drilling down and seeing how the relationship can be really beneficial to both parties. So I can appreciate that.
And let me jump in and say, it's really, you learn, and I've learned that it's karma, and it's also the universe is listening. So you are looking for investment, but you're not willing to invest. So that's the piece. And so it'll keep showing up until you get that lesson.
So speaking of investment, so I know you do some coaching.
Yes.
And people can go to your website and find out about that as well. But I want you to put your coaching hat on for me for a second. So in the Black Box App podcast, we always ask our subject matter experts like yourself these three questions. Mm-hmm. What is your advice for individuals that are kind of at the entry level point of their career?
So I love this because we know through our phases of our life, we're in different phases of not just our career, but our life. So let's say if you're in your 20s or fresh out of undergraduate college or fresh out of school or ready to work, you're still living outside of yourself, or you're going to live outside of yourself. You're partying, you're making money that you haven't made before, you have a sense of freedom, so a lot is going on. But when it comes to work, what I often advise entry-level people is to say yes. I write about that in my book around Say Yes Leadership, to where raise your hand for projects, say yes, get on the team, and be a contribution in a way that maybe you hadn't been, right? But really, you want to sprinkle yourself as much as you can. With that saying yes, the request is to do the work, right? So get the work done, deliver on deliverables, understand the key players. And also for entry-level people, what I didn't learn very early on, but it took me some time to learn, is learn everything you can about the company, how the company makes money, and what their lines of business are, right? I needed to be clear on that. And then I also tell people to anticipate and connect the dots. This is when I was a younger professional, when I coach younger professionals, that's the piece. Like, how do you connect the dots on what system or policy impacts the other departments? And I will say this throughout some of the coaching, but remember that there's always a bigger fish. So what that means is to manage up. So just like they understand how keep the lines of business and who the key players are in the company, also understand the politics of the office, or the organization, and how things work. And when you do that, you can make some clear choices around next steps.
I love it. Say yes. That's amazing advice and information. I think just that word alone takes people to places that they can't even imagine. It just puts you in the right room. All right, so you're an entry level career person. You're saying yes all over the place. Your career is advancing. 5 years go by. You're in mid-management roles and opportunities. What's the mindset there? What needs to happen?
Great question. So mid-management, you're rising, like you said. You have some level of success. The first thing that I had to learn for myself, and what I see in my clients, is that remember to fill your own cup, right? And so with that, we call it health and wellness, we call it balance, we call it well-being. I don't say work-life balance anymore. I do say balance the life that you have. Because if you're ambitious and you're on the rise and you're getting called and you're getting tagged for new roles, then your work-life balance is going to look different than mine would, right? As a entrepreneur. So balance the life that you have, and remember to fill your own cup. Always remember as well that there is always a bigger fish, so continue to manage up. And what I also learned around in the mid-level management, since people starting to see you as a mentor, so share information, right? And leverage it, leverage those relationships, start to make asks in ways that you hadn't asked before. Why not, right? And then let's see, remember those things. And then anything else I have to say around that, like I said, share the information, leverage it, and because that's going to continue to expand who you are and your visibility, right? And so can remember to do those things. And I think that'll help mid-level people.
No, but I'm glad you shared that, because I believe that's the importance of some of the things that we're doing and need to do. And that's why I love communicating and socializing and networking and working with people like yourself, because you're an information sharer. And I think that's really important, especially as Black men, because we're navigating spaces that may be uncharted territory.
Yes.
And oftentimes we can't go to an uncle or father or someone to get that information because they may have not like advanced to that level. So with that being said, you kind of need to find it where you can find it, and hopefully we're able to provide it on through means and things like this. So this is exceptional information that you're sharing.
Yeah, before you say that, thank you for that. I have one more thing for mid-level managers, and I love to say this to people, is bake the cake first. This is a Rahshibism. Bake the cake first. And what that means is sometimes people they start to go to their boss and say, I have an idea. And what does the boss do? Smack it down. But I tell people, if you walked in that office with a baked cake and asked the manager or your boss, do you want a piece of cake? What are they going to say?
Right.
Yes. But if you come with an idea that you're going to bake one, the people are going to say no before you even start. So remember to bake the cake first. That may require putting a little work in, but when you come to the table with 3 flushed out ideas, what I found is, in my experience, is people will say, oh, give me a piece of part A, give me a slice of part B, and give me the toppings on part C. So they took they took your ideas, they just wanted it formatted a certain way. And so remember to bake the cake first.
I love it. I love it. So we say yes, we bake the cake first. We're building relationships. Now we're in the senior level role, and we're kind of maybe not kind of on the downside of our career, but we're in a position where we're very influential. What do we need to do as Black men in senior level roles to really add value, just historic value throughout the workplace?
Absolutely. That's a great way to phrase it and frame it around historic value. One thing I've learned as a coach is that the answers really, they never lie with the other person. They always lie with the client or with the person. And so when we're mad or upset at someone else, it may not be them, it may be you. And so what I always tell anyone is to continue to look in the mirror and to continue to seek feedback on, maybe get feedback on what you've contributed, how it's supported them, and what else can be done. But why I say that, Kenny, is because I want people to close the gap on who they say they are and how they're actually showing up. Sometimes it could be a bad thing to where you're very successful at what you do, and yet you burn people out, no one wants to work with you, all those things. Other times you may be very successful at what you do, and then you have so many people under your coaching tree. So I always like to say, seek feedback, and so you can close that gap. And then also continue to develop others, right? I say this in community organizing or the D&I work, right? If you are the only person that can do what you do, then you haven't done it right. You should have developed people around you, beneath you, side to side, that can actually do what you do if you decide to step away. So then the work and your legacy and whatever the core values of that company or your business continue on. And especially if we're doing work to heal, to create equity for Black people, and to create to end systemic racism in America and in the world, we're going to need more people than us. And Kenneth, I say that because it can look very weird at the senior level, because we now have the houses that we want, right? We now vacation where we want, and we have all of these trappings of success that we forget sometimes to bring people along with us. And when you create more yous, when Jay-Z starts creating more billionaires, the world is a better place. And LeBron, right?
I love it. Legacy work. It's about that life as a legacy piece. So you're doing legacy work, my friend. It's Rahshib Thomas on the Black Box App podcast, here with your host, Kenneth L. Johnson. And we're talking about kind of what individuals need to do in their careers. So when we set up the app, we just wanted to add value, man. We really didn't have any ulterior motives. There wasn't an agenda in place. we just wanted to provide a place where Black men can go find career resources that are aimed and geared towards them. What type of resources have been helpful for you in your career?
Absolutely. Well, resources that have been helpful for me, number one is relationships, right? Getting to know people, and how those relationships came was through volunteering. It's different meeting people in the club versus meeting them on a volunteer activity where actually you're reading to after school kids or you're helping with voting registration. You start to meet people and your credibility is different. So volunteering was a great piece. Also, I am a reader. I do like to also go to professional development workshops. So even if the company is not sponsoring them, I would find things on my own to go to. Now, because it's 2022 and we have virtual technology, I can attend a lot of webinars that are out there. Sometimes I pay out of my pocket, sometimes they're sponsored. But then also there's so many podcasts. I like this podcast that give you valuable information that if you were paying for that, you would pay a pretty penny. So volunteering, also going to professional development workshops and relationships, those have been great resources. And the last thing I'll say is the personal piece is being in discovery. Like, I'm a seeker of knowledge, and I think people that I've seen be successful, and you know how they say success leaves clues, those people are seekers of knowledge. They're always looking for, they're happy and grateful for what they have, but they're also asking bigger questions like what's next and what else can I do and how else can I be a contribution? So when I've sought more knowledge and asked bigger questions, things have opened up for me.
I love it. We're coming down the stretch here, my friend. Why do you believe an app like Black Box is important?
So like I said, we occur in relationship to one another. And as Black men, we need to access love from other men and other Black men. And sometimes that love may look like in the form of information sharing or imparting knowledge or speaking to those nuances of being a Black man in America and in the business world that someone else may not get. As a racial equity coach, I send white women to work with a white woman racial equity coach because they speak a language that I don't speak because I ain't a white woman, but I am a Black man. And so that's what I think the Black Box app, why it's necessary. And I'm so glad that it's available because we're going to be the key to our own healing.
Well, people like you are the key to our success at Black Box. And I want to thank you so very much for offering your valuable time to just share a conversation with me for our audience. So I appreciate you. Please let the members of our audience know and other listeners how they can stay connected to the great work you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you. So they can always find me at Instagram, right? At Rahshib. And then also you can, About That Life book is aboutthatlifebook.com. And you can also find me at RahshibThomas.com. But Google me. I'm not a big deal, but I am legit. So you'll find me.
Hey, you're a big deal to me, my friend. I appreciate that. I love it. I love it. Google Rahshib Thomas and connect with him on all social media platforms. I know he's active on LinkedIn because I've seen him there. I'm getting ready to connect with you on IG if I'm not already. And I'm also going to request an autographed copy About That Life. Thank you so very much for visiting the Black Box app podcast, Rahshib Thomas. We view you as a leader out here in the space in New York City, Harlem, Louisiana, Tacoma, Washington. I'm sure everybody is proud to call you one of their own. So thank you so very much, my man.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here and keep up the work you're doing.